Hey everybody, how's everybody doing today? Welcome to my photography chat live stream where we talk about photography, catch up with the community, and also it's an open Q&A. So if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them here for you live. And as always, it's good to see everyone. I hope you're doing well. I'm doing well. Been really busy with the photo club with David Crooks. I see you're here. How you doing, David? Thought you'd be at Huntley Meadows this morning, but yeah. So I guess. A lot of things this week, right? We had, and I talked about it last week maybe. The OM5 Mark II is out. I really like the sand beige color. I'm more on the fence now than I was before about getting one. So my gas is tempered a little bit, but it's a fabulous camera in my opinion. We can talk about that if you'd like. Just if you have any questions about that, or like more of my thoughts on that, or you can share your thoughts. That would be great. And And then I did some birding yesterday, trying to capture tree swallows and barn swallows, and I ran into a few issues there that I want to talk about. Uh, Pluses and minuses, and then related to the gear, I was using my OM3 and 75 to 300, and then and a little bit of macro work. So if you guys follow me on Instagram or my Flickr page. Usually I post to Instagram first, and then I post m- more shots on Flickr than I do on Instagram. And as always, all the EXIF data is always there. So if you like to, look at settings and things, and a lot of people do, because I think settings matter, despite a lot of people say that settings don't matter. I think they matter, and and I think gear matters, right? But gear is separate from photography, particularly creative photography. And okay, also I went to the district camera event. They had a big event yesterday. It was sort of a mini build. They didn't have like any influencers and speakers and all of that. It was basically they had all the manufacturer reps there, everybody except OM Systems, it seems. So I did check out the new Fuji cameras in particular, because there's nothing really new or exciting happening with Canon, Nikon, Sony, in my opinion. And and then a couple of new lenses that they had there. Nothing. I didn't. I ended up not buying anything. I did find one thing that was pretty awesome that I have in my shopping cart right now because they didn't have it there at the store, and they were thinking it might be a month or two before they get them in. So I might just buy it on Amazon. I have to give it some thought. It has to do with my landscape photography and tripods and all of that stuff. Uh, so those are kind of the things going on. Let me just get to the chat, and because I see there's a lot of chats already. I see Darko's here. Good morning. How are you, Darko? Um, Hope everyone had some great adventures. Yeah, so I was busy this week with some photos, and says I've been thinking more about the process of photography than gear as of late. The psychology of taking images and why we take the shot. Okay. I mean, that's a very common thing that people say, and I'm talking about creators on YouTube. When a camera does not have all the latest and greatest tech, right, or are limited in some way. So a great example is the Sigma BF. You know, the camera sucks on its face. Okay, it's beautiful, beautiful. I think it's beautiful. I almost bought one. I s- I still think about it, but the pragmatic side of me is outweighing my gas right now because it's super expensive. I mean, for what it is. So during the reviews, like for example, no EVF, no hot shoe mount, and no real jacks on it, just the USB-C port, no SD card, memory's all internal, and no shutter, so it's electronic shutter only. So that eliminates, that introduces potential for rolling shutter and banding and artificial lighting. So there's a lot of cons to that camera. There's very limited controls on the camera itself, so it's very fiddly to get through the menus, to get the settings. It's not a fast camera in terms of operation. Like, I can't quickly change from aperture priority to shutter priority or choose a picture profile. I have to kind of click, turn, all of that stuff. The touch screen doesn't let you access anything, any of the controls. So the most common comment that I saw was, "This is the camera that makes you slow down and think about the photography process," just like Darko was saying. And you know, I I would I would put that in a little more negative term. The camera forces you to slow down because it's just a very clunky camera, limited camera to work with. The S9, which I was not a big fan of, is looks like 10 times better camera for half the price. You know, I'm exaggerating a little, but why would anybody buy a Sigma BF when you can get an S9, which is virtually the same thing in terms of the size, weight, functionality, but tons more controls, tons more features, better video. There's a decent app for it. You could, the Sigma BF doesn't even have Wi-Fi, uh, et cetera, et cetera. No flip screen, tilt screen, nothing on that BF. So it forces you to slow down and think about the photography process. And I think that's a cop out. If you really want to slow down and think about the photography process, it's all here. Just slow down and think about it. Now, when I got back into shooting film, it forced me to get back into that process, right? So, but it was a double. It was a there was a, two challenges. One was getting a feel for the controlling a camera completely manually. That was kind of a hindrance to the creative process. And then also because you have to slow down and you don't get to see a preview right away. You have it might be days or weeks before you see the developed prints or negatives. But yeah, don't fall into the trap of getting a camera that's going to force you to slow down. If you want to slow down, just slow down. You know, put the camera in program mode, right? And just focus on the photography, because photography and gear are two different things, right? Now with the OM system cameras, Olympus, they have so many special features, right? All the computational stuff, and a lot of camera manufacturers are catching up to it now. But I try to, in my previous videos, to show you how to use the camera, and explain why all the settings do what they do, etc. And that's all about gear. That's got nothing to do with the photography, right? It's all about understanding the gear and getting the most out of your gear so you can use the camera to its fullest potential. But it's not about photography. My channel's not about photography. It's kind of ironic because you can't really have one without the other. But if I was any good at photography, I mean, my pictures are okay. Technically, they're okay. I have a certain style I'm starting to kind of come into, and I enjoy the process, and I enjoy the photos that I take, but they're okay. They're nothing special. So that's why. But that's what I want, is I want to be able to help you guys create something special, and I don't want the gear to get in the way. So if you want to focus on photography, like Darkos is thinking about, just put it in program mode and go out and shoot. you know, and just let the camera do all the work with the exposures and white balance and all of that. And don't let the gear get in the way. Okay. And if once you put it in program mode, you don't have to think about settings. You don't have to think about all the computational modes, and go out with a prime or a zoom. It doesn't matter. I'm kind of back and I've gone back and forth between prime and zoom myself when it comes to doing photography. Because for a little while, when you're a beginner, the lens, the camera, when you buy a camera, comes with a kit lens, which is typically a zoom. And you start out with zoom lenses, and then you get all this advice. Yeah, just go out with a fixed prime and concentrate on the composition for that field of view. And that's fine. That's one way to go about it. Uh, and I enjoy primes for the uh, options that it gives me in terms of exposure. So if I want a faster shutter speed, if I want a shallower depth of field, I can do those things, right, with a fast prime. But the trade-off is I'm at a fixed focal length. So now that we're getting very fast zooms, the f2.8 Pros, Pro lenses, I I I'm kind of leaning back towards using just zoom lenses and thinking about zoom lenses because already have a pretty good feel for all the different focal lengths and the opportunity it gives me when I'm in the field to zoom in or zoom out and get a wider shot. But sometimes I like shooting primes too, because it does force me to slow down and think about the composition. But it's not quite as critical for me anymore. I'm perfectly happy with a zoom and uh, appreciate the flexibility I get. But either way, so that's a very common thing that people tell you. Just go out with a prime lens, put the camera in program mode, and just focus on the composition and the photography. And then you don't have to worry about the gear. You don't even have to worry about the focal length. Everything is fixed. So just limit the camera yourself. And if you're worried about taking too many pictures, go get if you can find them anymore, like a 2 or 1 gig SD card so you can't take that many pictures. Or just set a mental limit. I'm going to stop at 24 or 36 images because when I think about all of the film that I've scanned in, other than the occasional out of focus picture, every single shot I took with a film camera was pretty much a keeper. I like that image because I was forced to slow down and think about the composition and think about the images I've taken. And then also because of the financial cost of film, you have a financial incentive to make sure the shot counts, right? I mean, it's got to be like an epic shot for me to take a picture with a film camera, right? It's like, yeah, the sky's on fire. I don't know. I don't know if that's enough for me to take a picture of. It's not that epic, right? I mean, I'm exaggerating again. So, but that's good, Darkwood. Yeah, forget about the gear. If you want to focus on the creative side of photography, the composition, and those things, it's very easy to do. Uh, Program mode and a prime lens. Okay. Let's see. Question about to you. What would you say is your provision thought process when you go out and shoot wildlife and other photography? I think the process differs slightly with each different type of photography. Uh, okay, prevision. Okay, I'm trying to get a grasp on what the question is. Okay. Uh, yeah, everything is different, right? So my favorite kind of photography is basically like architectural. I like lines and angles and big structures. I like huge man-made machines. It doesn't have to be a building. It could be just a giant crane or something. Because particularly with architecture, the architect went through a lot of thought about how to design the appearance of the building, typically. Uh, some buildings are just industrial, right? They're just a box with windows. But for the most part, the buildings are done in a creative way, the external. And I try to capture what the architect was trying to project, the feeling that he's trying to project about their creation, right? And also try to find new ways to capture the building, uh, or the architecture, or the art, or the expression, change the feeling of the building. And so that's kind of my thought process for that kind of photography. And then I'll give you one more example in wildlife. My thought process right now is not at the level of, say, Lee Hoy, who thinks about the composition and capturing essence, or uh, trying to capture, I forget, stunning. I forget the word he uses, the adjective, but he puts a lot more thought into the image to be, stunning or exceptional in wildlife, whether it's a bird in flight, it's a lion, or some other wild animal. My thought process right now is still in perfecting the skill to capture fast moving objects. Like I was doing barn swallows yesterday, and my whole focus is on the settings and optimizing those settings so that I get the best image possible. Once I've built up the settings to where I want, and the muscle memory and the skill set to track or find whatever field craft, right? I'm talking about field craft. Then I can start to think about the composition and the creative choices I would make to capture wildlife. So a lot of, I think, what I think about before I go out and shoot, I choose the lenses that I'm going to use, right? I think about the lenses and the gear that I'm going to use for a particular type of photography. And then once I've made that decision, how is that gear going to help me? I pick the gear that I think is going to help me capture whatever it is I'm going to do that day. But it could be for very different things, right? Wildlife versus, say, still life. Very, very different. And that's why, I like to think my architecture photography is a little more creative than my wildlife. My wildlife photography, like the barn swallows I did yesterday, is strictly about trying to capture the image to begin with, never mind anything else. Uh, and once I kind of got the gear out of the way, that process, because you can't put the camera in program mode for wildlife photography, right? You have to really dial in your settings and optimize them for the kind of wildlife you'll be shooting. Once I kind of get that out of the way in a very natural way, then I can focus on like what Lee Hoy talks about in his videos and his workshops and things. Okay, I've been enjoying some vids from Tatiana Hopper on her perspective. Other famous been fine looking at their works. For example, Sal Leader is inspiring. Yes, so absolutely study the works of the masters of photography. Sal Leader is one of my favorites because of there's a lot of things, the color and the mood and all of that he captures, the very ordinary moments, but the stunning colors, you know. But the only challenge with looking at work that is, like Sal Leader and others, is there's a huge nostalgia factor there because for whatever reason, I think the modern lifestyle that we live in today is relatively boring, uh, as opposed to at least where I live, right? Everything is just glass, steel, neutral grays and beiges. It's like just so boring. And it's very, very hard for me to find interesting architecture, interesting colors, things like that. Uh, and so the works of these masters, there's a huge nostalgic factor, even in portrait photography. The clothes that they're wearing, headdress, the backgrounds, everything has this huge nostalgic factor, and you have to be able to separate that nostalgia from the actual work that the photographer did. And look at how they see the light in a scene, right? Or see the color, the light and the color. And think about, because a lot of the pictures are actually quite ordinary. If I took the same exact picture today in the modern world like Sal Leader did, it would be boring as heck. Not because it's derivative of Sal Leader, but because I feel like the modern world is just glass, steel, beige, gray, white, just boring, boring, boring. Oh my God. Uh, and that's kind of like why I really enjoy black and white photography, because I can concentrate on the light, the angles, and things like that. But in color photography, you have to really think hard and look hard for the compositions, as opposed to, I think, back in the day. I mean, that nostalgia, like look at the 1970s, all these like awful greens and oranges and yellows, shag carpeting, all of that stuff. Go back to the 50s and 60s, and you got my house was built in 1950. I got like a pink bathroom. I still got the original hardware. I had to replace the toilet because it cracked for no reason. But I got the original pink tiles and pink sink and pink bathtub in there. You go to a modern bathroom today, it's all white and chrome, right? With some grays like slate. It's like it's like everywhere. Like I went to my cousin's house. He just bought a brand new condo, and it felt like a hospital in there. Everything was so sterile and just plain. I was like, for God's sake, put up a picture of your kids or something at least. This just doesn't feel like a home. But that's my point is, try to find try to put the nostalgia side part aside and look at the other elements of the photo that make it great. And it's going to be the lighting, the colors in Sal Leader's case, and the composition, with layering and putting pieces together. All of these things, study those things and try to separate that from the nostalgia factor, right? Okay. And as regard, I've watched one or two of her videos, and that's it. I just wasn't interested in watching anymore. It's always nice to hear someone else's perspective on on the great master photographers. But and it's like the other guy, the photographic eye, who does a lot of the same thing, right? Talks about photography and talks about a lot of the photography masters. And initially, I enjoyed a few of his videos, but I've totally dropped off. Uh, I don't know. It just doesn't interest me what somebody else's opinion of somebody's artwork is. I want to be able to look at it myself and see what I can draw from it. If I look at another photographer's photos and I don't like it, I'm curious why it's so good, right? Or why it's known, why this photographer is known for these particular types of images. So I'm a little curious, like, how is this picture special? You know, why, because there's another photographer, I can't remember his name now. There's a lot of pictures I looked at from them that I was like, I've taken pictures like that. What's special about that? I think it was a picture. I forget. I don't know why the name is. He's really famous. The name. I'm so bad with names. But if the image doesn't strike me as interesting, then I don't care, right? I just don't care. And especially I don't care what other people think of it, you know? But definitely, look for works of the master photographers, find the ones that you like, and then imitation is the highest form of flattery, they say, but it's also a great way to learn photography in general. So, a photographer I do really like is Yusuf Karsh. I'm not really a portrait guy, but he is a master of doing portrait photography, in my opinion. I also like Clayton. Amazing the work that he does in portraiture, and if you can't get away with a lot of things they did these days, or you don't have access, to celebrities and things like that. But the work that they do is amazing, and how they capture the the emotion and the feeling of the person they took a picture of and who they are. There's a modern day photographer. I subscribe to their channel. I can't remember their name either, but he's done a lot of celebrity work and is an amazing photographer as well, and has captured some amazing images. So study the masters, find the ones that you like, and don't worry about what other people think of them. Right? I mean, it was mildly interesting. Like I subscribed to a channel about the masters of photography. I think that was the name of the channel, and I watched one or two videos, and it was interesting. But then I just had no interest to continue watching because I just discovered I didn't care what they thought or what they saw in the photos. I only care about what I think and what I see and how I can get inspired for those things. I don't want to watch somebody else's video and be influenced, right? Like all the gear videos you see are the influencers, including myself, uh, persuading you to buy gear, or in this case, persuading you to like someone else's photos, no matter how good they are. If you don't like them, you don't like them. It's okay. Inspiration is great and all, but we also need to review our own perspectives and grow from there. This is one of my goals. Yeah, that's definitely a worthwhile goal. I'm still working on that myself. And David, yep, David's here, and yeah, it's gonna be hot today. It's only 82 degrees right now, it looks like, but I have my AC on already just to get a head start. I spent the last hour unclogging my sink drain just before the stream. I don't know why I said that. I was just thinking about how my day started is a clogged uh, sink drain. And Ethan says, I'm here, been busy doing macro work lately using the old Lights 20x point 4 objective from the 90. Oh, interesting. So I think that's a microscope lens, right? Uh, I don't know if this is you or not, but somebody's doing, I think it is you, one of one photos. Is that you, Ethan? Uh, amazing work. I gotta show you this guy. He's on Instagram. One of one of one. Why can't I find it? I subscribed or followed one of. Yeah, there it is. One of one images. So uh, it's one of one images, And the macro work here is crazy. How close. In particular, these. I mean, look at who can get shots of this with bug eyes. It's amazing. But I'm really impressed with these grains of sand. It's amazing. I didn't. Who knew how beautiful sand is? When I see sand, but I never wild red sand garment balanced on a bottom grain with great care. Yeah, this is amazing. So you guys should check out this Instagram. Okay, and then David says settings matter if the conditions are the same. Yeah. You got to learn how to use, like a program mode is not getting you the image that you want in terms of lighting and or color. You can you need to know how to adjust your settings, but I would say just concentrating on putting in program mode with a prime lens is probably the best way to get started. And Roberto's here. Good to see you. And Ethan says it's only sharp in the middle, but 50% gets some insane shots at around 0.5 millimeter. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, you do amazing work, Ethan. And let's see. Jeff is here. ATR Bear. ATR went to the Build Expo in New York, uh, sponsored by B&H Photo, and shared his experience there. So I appreciate that. He sent me an email. And Thomas, good to see you from Atlanta. And David says, I regard camera gear as a toolbox, stuff to do the job I need to do and not over worry about the needy stuff. Yes. Yeah, if you're a very pragmatic person, you just look at your camera gear as just tools, right? I I I look at them more as just toys in a way that I like to collect or experience, I guess. I don't know. Hi Rob, thoughts on Sony 55 or the cheaper? Get the 55. Get the 55. Um, I got mine used for, I think I paid 400, and you want to get the one that says Zeiss. Don't get the one that says Carl Zeiss. There's two versions of that lens, and you want to get the one that says Zeiss on it, not Carl Zeiss. And that lens is amazing. That lens that lens is the only reason I'm really keeping that Sony A7R5 is because I think about the camera. I'm not a big fan of the camera, but I'm a huge fan of that lens. And if they didn't have some amazing lenses for that camera would be gone. But I still think about the Zeiss lenses available for the Sony mount, and that's the only reason I'm keeping it because I'd like to experience or use those lenses and enjoy those lenses. And as far as I know, they only make them for Sony. I think I can adapt some older f mount Zeiss lenses to any of my other mirrorless cameras. So I think about doing that sometimes because I used to have like the 35 millimeter f2 Zeiss. That was an amazing lens. I sold it eventually because it's just so heavy, and I just didn't take it out because I was like, man, this lens is too heavy. Because I was using it, I primarily use micro four thirds, so the field of view is a little tight, and the lens was super heavy. But there's, the certainly the Sony 51.8 is a very good budget option. So if you need a 50 millimeter focal length, just get that. But uh, if you can spend about double a 55 1/8 Zeiss, is super. And I tested the Carl Zeiss and the Zeiss side by side, and the Zeiss version is better. Very slightly, just very slightly. The pixel peeping geek side of me got in. I get into that mode when I'm shopping for gear, and it's just a little better, especially in the corners. And Peter's here. Good morning, all. Shoot a lot of film. The carryover is I hardly ever take more than one shot when shooting digital. Yeah. So I definitely, when I started shooting film again, I did temper the number of shots I took with digital quite a bit as well, with the exception being birding. Because Pro Capture, I came home with 4,000 images yesterday. I pruned out a couple thousand already, but still a long way to go. I think I'm gonna, I've already starred like about 50 of them. I think if I don't look at the folder again for another week or two, I'm just gonna delete everything except for the ones that I put a star next to. And Paul says, "Hi, Rob. Processing pictures of birds. I shot the 90 macro lens today. Nice. Yeah, that is one of the best lenses uh, of any brand, really. When it comes to macro lenses, it's one of the best, if not the best." And Henry says, regarding prime versus zoom, I was told by YouTubers that primes give better picture quality since they only have to deal with one focal length. That made sense, but then I'm told by Olympus rep that. Oh, there's more. The 12 to 42.8 is better than the 1.8 prime because the 12 to 40 is pro. Okay, so I think a lot of the stigma of zoom lenses comes from the film days when zoom lenses really did suck and primes were by far superior to the zooms. But these days, zoom lenses are amazing in terms of just sheer optical quality. So, yeah, I would definitely say don't hesitate to buy a zoom lens if you want to buy a zoom lens. Don't worry about the quality. The only advantage a prime really gives you these days is the faster aperture, right? 1.8, 1.4, 1.2, 0.95 if you want to go third party. That's really the only reason you'd want to go, and that's why I prefer primes because it does give you more options in terms of exposure. And also, the ads are too disruptive to the continuity of the chat. Yeah, I put it down to minimum. Minimum. They have like three settings: low, medium, high, and I put it on low. Uh, I mean, if I turn on completely off, I mean, the life of a live stream, I make like $2 to $5. That is it. You know, maybe I should just turn them off altogether. But that's all I got is the $2 to $5 on each video that I make. Video, whether it's a video or a live stream, it's $2 to $5 each. And then as the video gets older, it goes down to just pennies, pennies, if that. Sometimes most, what do I got? 300 plus videos on this channel. I would say maybe 50 of them make more than 1 cent per month, and then 10 of them make 10 of them make 20 to $30 per month, and that's about it. And the live streams add, if I do 3 a week, that's an extra $15 a week, let's say. So that's 60, 100, that's an extra $100 a month, right? It'll pay for the gas on my car. And speaking of, thank you so much, Wands. I really appreciate that. Uh, you know, Other than the occasional super chat like this or membership, you know, I have to rely on the ad revenue and affiliate links, right? But hi, Rob. I have the Ollie 17 and the 45 1.8, and I want to buy a versatile zoom lens. Which one do you recommend? Only Ollie 12 to 40? Have you tried the Yongnuo 12 to 35? So you want to get the 12 to 40. I have not tried the 12 to 35, and I'll tell you why. I would even say get the 12 to 45 as that would be my second choice, and my third choice would be the Panasonic 12 to 35 1.8, and very last would be something like the Yongnuo. I haven't tried it. What do I know about that lens? But I can tell you that if you get the Pro lens, the 12 to 40 and the 12 to 45, they have one significant advantage over Panasonic and Yongnuo, and that is the close focusing distance. So you can do close-up photography much easier with those lenses. And also, you'll have access to the uh, in-camera focus stacking, right? If you use a third-party lens, whether it's Panasonic, Yongnuo, etc., you won't be able to do in-camera stacking. And that is a very, very powerful tool that you do not want to miss out on. Because people think of focus stacking just for like macro work, but that's not the case. You can also use it in landscapes, all your photography where you want a very deep depth of field. The only way you're going to achieve that is with focus stacking. And to not have that option in the table because you use a third party lens is a deal breaker for me. Um, so, of those, I would definitely get the 12 to 40, 12 to 45 F4 Pro, or Panasonic 2.8, and then last, the Yongnuo 12 to 35. And especially when that overrides, Rob, answering your question. Man, yeah, I hate when that happens. I'm gonna try this next. When's my next stream? On Tuesday? I do shopping streams on Tuesday. I'm gonna turn the ads off on Tuesday. So next week, Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday, I'm gonna turn the ads off and see what happens. It's a little scary because I could use that $15. Trust me. I spent $60 yesterday. $60 between breakfast, lunch, and dessert. And I ordered the cheapest thing on the menu at that restaurant. And I didn't go to no fancy pants restaurant. I went to a freaking diner and then for breakfast, and then I went to a Mexican place for dinner, and then I skipped lunch because I overate at breakfast. Even though I ordered the cheapest thing, I was with the photo club. People always give me toast. People are just not into carbs, right? So they're trying to reduce their carbs, and a lot of times the breakfast comes with toast. I'll take it. um, I'm hungry, man. But and then ice cream. We went to get ice cream after for ice cream was like $7 frickin' dollars for 2 scoops. So I'm out $60 or and ordered the cheapest things, man. My God, it's pissing me off. I can't believe how expensive it is to eat out. Normally, the only time I eat out is like at breakfast with the photo club. But we went out 3 times this week, and I ate out 2 of those times. I put on like 3 pounds. I got to peel that off. This week, I gotta really be strict on my diet this week. Peel that back off. It should come off pretty quickly because I'm not normally 3 or 4 pounds heavier than I am. So I'm gonna try it, and hopefully, uh, we can make up for it with you know memberships and super chats and affiliate sales, and see what happens. I don't know. It's scary thought to me. Um, but I see George over here. right there. Awesome. Thank you so much, George. George is he drops me $10 every now and then, and I really appreciate it. It really makes the streams, just uh or makes not the stream, but makes me feel so much more appreciated. Because sometimes I feel like I'm just talking to myself, right? I mean, I don't know how many people are in the chat, but I love talking about photography and trying to help people as much as I can. So I come out here as often as I can, but it's so much appreciated. And Robin Wong is a master of taking colorful. Yeah, he's good. Or I'm sorry, Robin is very good. He's definitely got a very distinctive style. When you see his Instagram posts, you can definitely see his style there. Very, very bold colors. But he lives in a country where they still do very bold colors. They'll paint the entire building yellow. You won't see that here. You might see maybe an individual home painted yellow, but this area in particular, there's nothing but condos and homeowner associations, and they're all so strict, like no bold colors, nothing outside of your property. You can't do nothing if you live in a condo. Even where I live here, I have no homeowners association. But if I don't cut my grass, I get a letter from the county. So they got somebody driving around looking at people's yards. My poor neighbor's getting destroyed by the county. Ah. And then when he gets a letter, I usually get a letter. Nothing serious like his, but they told me that I couldn't stack wood in my backyard. I'm like, are you serious? Because I have a fireplace. I can't stack wood in my backyard. Anyhow, life is crazy. First world problems, but it's annoying. And the UK has an interesting architecture story. I find Industrial Revolution artifacts most satisfying photograph. Oh, okay. Yeah, see, the UK, all the European companies, you guys have been around for centuries, right? Uh, Here in the US, we're still what? I guess we're getting older, but only a couple hundred years old, right? 250, something like that. We don't have like buildings from, say, 400 years ago or 500 years ago, or castles, old castles, things like that. So the architecture here is pretty rudimentary. We have to kind of start out with, I guess, colonial style, and then it's moved on from there. Queen Anne style, Gothic style. The universities that like that kind of Gothic style. But those are the oldest things we have, and those are the only things with character, and they're far and few between. They'll Here in the U.S., man, they will tear a building down and put a data center up. They don't care. Could be like some historic building, but we need a data center for all this AI crap. No, they'll just tear it down. Clayton was just on a podcast I recently listened to. Yeah, he's amazing. He's a modern day photographer. He's amazing. A Zine would be fun to self-reflect and keep motivated. Print a small little book, but yes. Um, I just have a binder where I put photographs that I like in and go back to it time to time. And Ethan does an outstanding yes, Ethan Blecker, right? He is amazing. And better than the new Zooms, but that's not necessarily true anymore. There are Zooms that have very good quality, yes. And John Steiner says, Rob, I watched several of your videos regarding TT350O for flash photography. I'm using it with the OM5. Can you explain sync versus high-speed sync and its use? Yeah. So um, sync speed has been around forever, right? And that is the speed at which the flash, uh, or okay, let's talk about sync speed is related to the shutter. So the shutter opens and closes at a certain speed. So say 1/60th of a second is a typical shutter speed, right? 1/100th of a second. And when the shutter opens and closes, okay, that's when the light comes in. Now, when the flash fires, it's not instant. Well, I mean, it's instant, but the flash fires or the light turns on in the flash for a certain duration. The longer it stays on, the brighter it'll make the exposure. The shorter it's on, the less power the flash is going to be, or the less effect it has on the exposure. So flash is technically not more or less powerful. Uh, it's all based on the duration that the flash stays on. That speed that flash stays on can be, 1/1000th of a second. So maybe you've heard, this is kind of a tangent, maybe you've heard is the flash acts like the shutter. In a pitch black environment or low light environment, yeah, the flash is effectively your shutter. And the flash firing speed is, say, 1/1000th of a second. So with the mechanical shutter, right, you have a shutter that opens and closes in your camera. This is hard to explain without a script, right? I'm just going to do this off the fly. So hopefully I get this in the right order or explain this well. But it takes a certain amount of time for the shutter to completely open and expose the sensor and close. And how fast it can do this is going to vary camera to camera. And a lot of times, uh, it will open and close, say, at about 1/250th of a second. So it takes 1/250th of a second for the shutter to open and close. So if you set your shutter speed to 1/250th of a second, it's going to open and close at 1/250th of a second. So it's going to open and close completely, completely open and completely close in 1/250th of a second. If you set your shutter speed to 1/60th of a second, it's going to completely open and close in 1/60th of a second. All right. So then we get into shutter speeds faster than 1/250th of a second. Let's say you set your shutter speed to 1/1000th of a second. The shutter cannot open and close completely in that short amount of time. It just physically just cannot do that. Okay. So what it does instead, hold on, I gotta check, make sure okay, that's nothing to do with my stream. Sometimes somebody will text me and say, Rob, your audio's out or something like that. What was I talking about? Oh, so yeah, the shutter cannot completely open and close in 1/1000th of a second. So what it does instead is it opens up a little bit and then goes down like this, right? So it opens a little and then goes down the sensor like this. And it effectively mimics 1/1000th of a second by exposing the light in little pieces at a time as it goes down. Now, if you use a flash at, say, 1/250th of a second, where the shutter completely opens and closes, the entire sensor is going to be exposed, right? Because the entire sensor is being exposed to the light. And when your flash fires during that time that the shutter is completely open, you're going to get the light from the flash. So that's why they set the sync speed typically 1/200th, 1/250th of a second, that when the shutter is completely open, the flash can fire, light up the scene while the shutter is completely open. However, when you go above the sync speed, that's what they call the sync speed. When you go above the sync speed, your shutter potentially starts to only open partially and then stay open and go down across the sensor like this, right? If your flash fires while it's only this far open, that's why you start to get black bars, right, in your flash or in your images. You'll see black bars, the top, the bottom, sometimes in the middle. It just depends when the flash fires and what your shutter speed is set for, and it's going to vary camera to camera. So what they did is they designed something called high-speed sync. So what that does is as the as the shutter is opening at a in a narrow way, right? Like only partially, the flash will fire, and then as the shutter goes down a little bit more, the flash will fire again, and then as it goes down a little more, it'll go fire again. And it'll do that multiple times until the entire sensor has been exposed using the flash. Uh, because remember, let me go back to this. The flash will fire at 1/1000th of a second. So if your shutter is here, the flash will fire and only expose this part of the sensor. And then as the shutter moves down, the rest of the scene is going to be dark because the flash is already turned off. So that's why you get these black bars. So what they do is they make the flash fire multiple times. And they do that. And a lot of times, this is why you might hear high speed sync reduces the power of the flash because now the flash cannot stay on as long because it has to turn off and fire again, turn off and fire again, like this. Uh, Now, there's some hacks and tricks to kind of get around high speed sync uh, to a limited degree. I'm not going to get into that because it rarely works, but some say just have the flash at its full power. Full power meaning it's going to leave the flashlight on as long as possible so that it'll cover the duration as your shutter remains partially open all the way down until the sensor is completely exposed. But high speed sync is basically having the flash fire multiple times as the shutter curtains go down the sensor, and that's what high speed sync is. So sync speed is talking about when the shutters are completely open and your flash fires. High speed sync is when your shutters are partially open and move down the sensor to expose, or yeah, move down the sensor to expose the image, and the flash will fire multiple times as that's going down. That's the difference between sync and high speed sync, right? I hope that makes sense. But if something wasn't clear, not just for John, but anybody that I just talked about, this thing I just talked about, just let me know in the chat and I'll try and clarify. But hopefully that makes sense. If that doesn't make sense, I'll try and, ask me what part you didn't understand. I'll try and clarify. And I see uh, over here. Thank you, Juan, so much. Um, Another $2. I really appreciate that. Okay. Okay, so that was John's question. And good morning, Darko. Hope all is well. Everything's going well. Thank you. My chat jumped all the way up again. Well, I got to find my place here. And during the film days, primes were best. I assume the last two letters cut off, but yes. And better than the Zooms, but not, yeah, exactly. And I was looking for the Olympus 75 to 302. Uh, they are They were on sale this week. I don't know if there's any left at that price of $400. Let me take a quick look. If you're in the USA, let's see. But it's a great lens. Yeah, there's still one left. But yeah, this is the last one. If you want to buy it on Amazon, that is. So that's my affiliate link. I'll make like $4 or $8 if you buy it. Okay, let's see. And I need to go up, up, up. Yeah, maybe the ads are worse in the US. It could be. I wouldn't be surprised. And Shakabe asks, what do you think about Midicon Speedmaster 17.95 for Micro Four Thirds? I think it's these kind of lenses are better for video because they're optically they are very poor, and especially wide open at 0.95 from the reviews I've seen on this lens. And then once you stop it down, it's more or less as sharp as any other prime lens. But in video, a lot of the sharpness problems and optical, aberrations that you get when you're shooting wide open are mitigated quite a bit when you're shooting video because video is a much lower resolution and it's combining a lot of pixels together to make that 1080p or even 4K video. And in video work, because you're so limited with shutter speed, right? If you're trying to keep a certain shutter angle, so let's say you're shooting 24p, your shutter angle, your shutter speed should be 1/48th of a second. You need a very bright lens, typically at 1/48th of a second, on top of shooting at low ISO. So these kind of lenses make a lot more sense to me for video work. For photography, even low light photography, uh, I don't see the need for 0.95. Now, they can give a certain look, like a creative look. If all of these optical defects in the lens wide open are, you find them pleasing and will add to your creativity to your images, then yeah, certainly get it, but these are not lenses that are optically very good typically. And the 0.95s are typically very heavy. Let me just look at this lens real quick. Yeah, the Speedmaster, it's about 300 bucks. And I don't have any I wanted to see if there's a so yeah, we have some soap bubble effect. And if you look close, I can see very closely there's some greenish chromatic aberrations and not onion rings, I'm sorry, but a mild soap bubble. And I see some green chromatic aberration in the background. What I'm looking for is seriously, they didn't put it in here either. Maybe in the specs page. Nope. 8 blades, 12 elements. Oh, that's interesting. So they did put quite a number of elements in there, but it's still only 9 groups. It's 461 grams. Wow. 58 millimeter thread. Let me try to find. Yeah, they're not going to post pictures of anything that would really show the defects in this lens. That's at f1.4. This got to be a 0.95 image. The 1.2. These might not even be for the 17. But I think they're interesting lenses, and you can certainly shoot in much lower light with a 0.95. So if you do a lot of night photography, this lens will be fine. But usually in night photography, you have a lot of uh, coma, right, with these kind of lenses. but I've never used the lens, so I don't know how good or bad it is technically. But I guarantee it's going to have coma, flaring, chromatic aberrations, and all of these other kind of defects wide open. Now they can be creative choices, right? Especially with flaring, but just understand, and especially at that price point, that it's probably going to have very poor coating, so you're going to get a lot of flaring and low contrast. They did put a lot of elements in there. It depends on how they design. I was looking for a whatchamacallit. I was looking for an MTF chart because that's usually pretty representative of what what the lens is going to be like in real life. And when you see a big fall off towards the corners, depending on what it was designed for, whether it's an APS-C or full frame or for micro four thirds, is where you want to look at that fall off. And you also want to look at the lines per inch or per millimeter. Uh, you don't want that number to be below zero point 0.5 or 5, however they label the things. Once it drops off below that, you're going to definitely see some problems, right, in the image quality, meaning it's going to look soft. Okay, and Jew is here. Good to see you. And David says, I have the 12 to 200 and the 75 to 300 lenses. In spite of overlap, they get a lot of use. Yeah, I mean, though, there is certainly some overlap, but these are two very different lenses, right? Because the 12 to 200 is a little bit soft on the long end, whereas the 75 to 300 is pretty consistent, wide open all the way to the 300. I'd say between 75 and 250, it's pretty consistent, and then it gets a little softer as you get up to 300 millimeters. But it's going to be sharper than the 12 to 200. Where's your photography based out of? I'm in. Oh yeah, we're in. They. I think I saw David post a link. Uh, but yeah, we're generally in Northern Virginia is where we go. Southern Maryland, that's more like La Plata, right? I think. Once in a while, we'll go to Chapman State Park, but that's not very often. Once or twice a year, we might go there. Most of the events are held in Northern Virginia or further west. And thank you so much, Wand. I appreciate that. And John, my goodness, thank you, John. That's very generous of you. Says, thanks for the live stream. I just bought the TT350O and watched your setup videos. Great. Could you explain high speed? Okay. For whatever reason, I thought you asked this. I missed this, but thank you. It's really appreciated. If I had just got $5 in every video, I could turn the ads off. But today I've got like 30 or $40. That's amazing. I'd happily turn the ads off if this was very consistent. Um, so my local church is 1,000 years old, and my local pub is 250 years. The old pub is regarded as new. Exactly, right? I assume you're not talking about here in the U.S. It's crazy. And another $2. Thank you so much. It says any cheap and portable tripods to take on trips. Yes. If you join me on Tuesday, I will talk about tripods more. But uh, okay, I update this page a lot. I don't know if I'll get any affiliate money if you buy things when you click on any of them. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What that does is it takes you to my deal page. And tripods are one of the things that I look for the most. So this one has a 10% coupon. Oh, this has gone up in price since I posted it. But this is a good one. This is like $35, right? Or I'm sorry, about $38 for this tripod. This is a good tripod for $38. Uh, if you want a carbon fiber, this tripod, always remember to look for coupon codes and things down here in the fine print. 40% off. So that makes this tripod $90, and you're getting a carbon fiber travel tripod. Let's see. And then I usually have at least one more. This one is basically the same thing but taller. Uh, in terms of quality, it's about the same, but this is a very, very tall tripod because the center column is extendable. And let's see. That's a light stand. Okay, this is probably the best deal. Yeah, 30 bucks. This is a great travel tripod also. But, just go to that page to find the brand and then start looking for that. The things you want to look for in a budget tripod, you want to make sure the ball head is metal. A lot of the ball heads, especially the panning heads that are more for video, where you see the handle, those things are plastic pieces of crap. Okay. And they're selling for $30, $40. And they're crap. They might have the thin, cheap aluminum legs on them. Typically, you'll see a little center piece in that spreads the legs out. If you see that, run away. I'll give you an example. Uh, if I just type in the word tripods and we'll sort price low to high, and I'll scroll down. Let's see. I might have to go pretty far. Let me try this way. Hold on. Today's deals. Where are this one? This is a good example. This head here, this is all plastic. It's crap. Okay. Don't buy any tripod where you see the head on it looks like this. Okay. You will be sorry. And the legs are typically these actually have pretty nice legs, but you see this little thing down here that helps you keep the legs spread out evenly. These things break all the time because they're pieces of plastic. And then the plastic on the flip locks here are very cheap. And look what they're asking $25 for this. That's too much for something like this. So avoid this kind of tripod at all costs, is all I'm saying. Despite all the 4 and 5 star reviews, don't believe that crap. It's crap. And Marco's here. Hey Marco, how are you? I thought I saw something. I can't find it now. What do you think of I wouldn't waste your money on it. A lot of people like it and use it. I tried it for a little while, a third party one. And there's a couple of ways to use it, right? So you put the double E dot sight. This is like a little laser dot sight. Not laser, but it's a red dot, right? And I've seen people holding the camera out to look at this to kind of pan and to get the things in the scene. And the idea being is you can use the full wide field view of your own eyes to follow the bird, and then you just put the red dot on the bird. And if you have it calibrated properly, you can just push your shutter button and it'll take the picture. So a lot of people have it out at arm's length and they're tracking the bird. You can't do that if you got a 300 f4 or 150 to 600 or 150 to 4. If you got a big freaking telephoto lens, yeah, you can't do this. Uh, Number one, you're not stable, right? This is not stable and it's hard to track. The other way I see people use it is they have their eye up to the EVF and they do this and they look at the red dot and they follow this way, right? That's doable. But what I do instead is you see the if you see the top here, you have this the hot shoe. I line up the hot shoe just like a pistol or not a rifle, but typically pistols have the double. Uh, I line that up with the front of the lens if it's a telephoto lens. I just line up the top of this with the front of the lens, and I use that to track. And that's just as easy uh, as the red dot sight, in my opinion. So I wouldn't waste money on that. It's not worth it. It's like $100. There's third party ones for like $40, and they're crap. So they're very hard to calibrate, and you have to calibrate it every time you put it on your camera. And a lot of times the hot shoe, if the dot sight is not in there, you're tightening the dot sight down and it's just off a little bit, you might miss a lot of shots before you realize, then you have to loosen it and retighten it. Yeah, I would forget it. And the few people I've heard use it said they stopped using it after a while. They just didn't need it. How do you join? Please, apologize. Oh, there is a link. There should be a link below this video for joining if you want to become a member. It's just 99 cents and it supports the live streams here. Or you can go to my homepage, youtube.com/RobTrek, and there should be a membership join link there. So thank you very much for asking. I appreciate that. And it's 600 pounds for me. I'm from Portugal, so I need to buy from Amazon. Ooh, okay. Let's see. I know it's great. Prices are different everywhere. Sometimes the prices are awesome, sometimes they're really harsh. Australia is one place that it's very hard to buy gear at a good deal. I can tell you that from all the viewers from Australia coming in and saying, "Man, I had to pay, $1 million for this thing, and you guys can get it almost for free over there." And don't sweat the ad; you deserve to be compensated. Oh, I appreciate that, Marco. But at the same time, I don't want to disrupt the chat, right? It's kind of a balancing act, right? Do I want to make the $5 or do I want to, you know, give a better user experience? So I'm kind of leaning. I'm going to try it this week and see what happens. But yeah, I could use the extra 10 or $15 a week I get from live streams. Let's see. And Anthony's here. Hey, Anthony. Anthony emails me all the time. Not all the time, but time to time. And you guys can email me anytime. I think Roger, I haven't responded to your email yet. I'm sorry. You sent me some photos. Anyhow, I do try to respond to everyone's email. 'Cause I remember telling you last week I was going to reply that day after the stream, and then I forgot. I'm so bad. But I'm happy to get your emails and uh, share ideas and thoughts about photography. And and worse weather. This looks like I think we're talking about the OM5 Mark II. Worse weather sealing, worse stabilization, minimal computational features, etc. To new buyers, the OM5 Mark II represents a good value to guys like us that track everything. It seems minor. So I think Marco's making a good point. I kind of lost track of where. Oh, here it is. What does the XE5 that the OM5 doesn't? other than larger sensor, OM5 II has more features. So Mark Wolf was asking about the XE5. Oh, sorry. Here we go. I'm sorry. I missed your question here. Says thoughts on the OM5 Mark II. It seems that it has no new developments. Meanwhile, new cameras from other companies like Fuji X-E5 is making new milestone and pushing the boundaries with its 40 megapixel sensor. So at this point, the 40 megapixel sensor is not really new, right? It's at least a couple years old because I've had my XH2 for a couple of years now, it seems like. Uh, but in any case, I where are my pictures? Where are they? Yeah, there we are. So I went to the event yesterday and I looked at the XE5. Yeah, the expression on my face pretty much says it all. Meh. I also looked at the Sigma BF. There's my OM3, and I looked at this. This camera's a piece of crap. Only Fujifilm can sell this camera. Fujifilm, I feel like Fujifilm is kind of the Apple of the camera world. Only they can sell stuff for more than it's really worth and get away with it, and people are happy to pay it. Everyone else seems to have to be extremely competitive with features and pricing. Fuji doesn't have to be. Uh, People will just buy Fuji and they're happy to pay the money, kind of like Leica. Leica is probably a better example, but they're more of a luxury brand. You know, Apple's very mainstream. Fuji's very mainstream. And anyhow, uh, I don't want to put any shade on Fuji. They're awesome cameras, right? But okay, so yeah, there's a huge price difference between the two, and I think a very big difference in capability. And certainly the XE5, I don't believe is weather sealed. It does not have image stabilization. So there's a couple limitations there. I honestly I don't know much about the XE5. I shouldn't talk. But I'll tell you what I like about the OM5 Mark II. This is a camera I'm pretty familiar with because it's been around a while in terms of features and specs. So I will buy the OM5 Mark II over almost any other camera for two less that's under $2,000. Okay, and that's a pretty big net in the camera world, right? And um, because what other camera has weather sealing, sensor stabilization, in-camera focus stacking? I'm not going to talk about high-res shot mode, okay? But it has that. But that that's a little bit overrated in my opinion, although it works. And of course, the live comp, live bulb, uh, the computational features that OM Systems is known for. No other camera has these features, time lapse built in. Only recently has Sony started putting time lapse into their cameras. In camera focus stacking. Only recently have other manufacturers starting to do this in camera. But they cost a lot more. So it depends on what are your priorities, right? In my opinion, the OM5 can do just about everything you want to do, and you can grow with that camera to the end of your to do any kind of photography. Uh, Now the the XE5, I believe, has subject detect So, and as well as a lot of other cameras. But I couldn't find any compelling option under $2,000 that was really better than an OM5. I couldn't find anything. I mean, you can argue the X the XT50, but that doesn't have IBIS and it doesn't have weather sealing. But that's a very small camera, same size as say the XOM5 Mark II with a 40 megapixel sensor. If you want to get a Fujifilm camera, I would say you want to get the XT5. That's really the best value in their whole lineup, and it's a fabulous camera. And if you want to get an OM system camera, I would say the OM3 in my opinion, or the OM1 Mark I, or the OM5 Mark II. I don't know, you guys tell me what's better than the OM5 Mark II. I can't think of any camera because to me, I don't care about weather sealing, but I do like the computational features. I like the live ND. You know, I like the high res shot mode, even though I just said it's kind of it's a little bit overrated. It is, but I do like it. I use it all the time, and I like the in-camera focus stacking, and the image stabilization is amazing on these cameras. For somebody like me, if I didn't have image stabilization, I'd have to shoot at like 1/250th of a second all the time, because I just can't hold the camera straight. But with an OM system camera, typically I can set my minimum shutter speed to like 1/60th of a second, and all of my pictures are going to be sharp, for still life. Whereas I can't say that about a camera that does not have image stabilization. If it does not have image stabilization, I'm hurting even at 1/60th of a second. I have to be really, really, really thoughtful about my uh, holding the camera in my form. Once I get much below 1/250th of a second. But yeah, I'm on the fence a little bit about getting it because I have the M5 Mark III, and the OM5 Mark II solves a lot of the issues I have with the OM5 Mark III. Uh, it's going to have faster processing because it has a newer chip. It's going to have uh, better autofocus, supposedly. We'll see. And then, uh, of course, the USB-C port is nice. It's not a deal breaker. I mean, the regular USB port, the micro USB, you can still charge a camera battery through the ports. I don't know what USB-C really adds value, how that adds any value to the camera, other than, it's a little more compatible with all the different chargers that we might have out there. But USB-C does solve one critical problem, and that's if you want to do astrophotography or time-lapse photography, you can run the camera off the USB-C port indefinitely, right? Whereas with the older micro USB, you can't do that. The only thing this port is good for is charging the battery when the camera's off and transferring photos. But I looked at the specs, and if I do end up getting the OM5 Mark II, I can verify this. But the USB-C port, as far as I can tell, does not charge any faster than the regular micro USB-C port. It's still the same 5 volt, half an amp thing. It's not PD compatible. So you're not going to charge at 9 or 10 or 18 or 20 watts. It's going to charge at the normal, it's going to charge probably at 5 watts. So I don't know. If anybody knows, let me know for sure. But I didn't see that it was PD compatible in the owner's manual. But I would way get the OM5 Mark II over the XE5 from a very pragmatic choice. The OM5 I think is more capable and certainly a lot cheaper. If you like the styling of the XE5 and you enjoy or think you will enjoy the film simulations, and Fuji has a lot of great lenses as well. Uh, the higher resolution is kind of a you can see the difference when you pixel peep, but in actual photos that you would post online, you can't tell the difference in resolution. Um, but you will see a difference very slightly if you're printing super large prints and you're looking at them this close. But for all intents and purposes, 20 megapixels is more than enough for just the general enthusiast, right? But I can't think of anything on a pragmatic level that the Fujifilm would do better than the OM5. And but the Fujifilm X-E5, I think, is a beautiful camera. I'm a little tempted by it myself because of the looks. Of course, I have the luxury of having an OM3 and an OM1, so I already have all the capability I could possibly want to do anything I want because of the subject tech, like birding and stuff. But that's not to say you can't do all that with an OM5, because I used to do birding with the EM1 Mark III and the EM1 Mark II and my EM5 Mark III, but I just had to up my skill set a little bit so I could track the bird inside of like a 5 point or 9 point box and track by eye, right? So it kind of goes back to the dot sight thing. That's why I looked into those and ended up not using one. Once you get really good at tracking, the bird detect is not as quite as critical. Um, and I personally, I really love that new sand color. If it didn't come in a sand color, I would totally skip the OM5 Mark II. So let me make that clear. The sand color is ironically the biggest selling point for me. And at the price point of 11.99, I can't think of any other camera that has everything the OM5 Mark II does. The only thing lacking is the subject detect, but that's not a deal breaker for me because I know what the camera can do. I've shot with it birding. I like taking pictures of my dog, and the face and eye detect is excellent on that camera. It was on the OM5. It was on the OM, so I assume it's going to be on the OM5 Mark II. The face eye detect is really good on that camera, right on par with Canon, in my opinion. So if you're shooting pictures of your kids and stuff like that, it'll be fine. And your friends, I should say, not just your kids, but friends and family. It'll do a good job in portraits. So, but yeah, for me, if it didn't come in sand color, I'd probably pass on it because I have the M5 Mark III, which is good enough. It doesn't get much use anymore since I got the OM3. But if I had a sand color OM5 Mark II, I think it would inspire me to go out more because I just like the color so much. And it's also challenges my skill set a little more if I'm going to do any kind of birding or wildlife with it because it doesn't have the subject detect. So I can, up my game on my skill set at the same time. The bird detect, subject detect on the OM3, OM1s, it's almost like cheating. Uh, but it's never a substitute for good skill. But I think with Marco, getting back to this point, okay, 6K resolution headphone port, higher AF points, 40 megapixel resolution, IAF, better IQ pretty much better on camera. On paper, other companies are going all out while OM System is just rebranding. So in practice, I don't see anybody using the XE5 with headphones. Maybe, maybe, but they're packing more than they need to into it. Higher AF points, yeah, it could have, it has subject detect, which I've used on my XH2, and it's okay. It's not as good as the OM1, but it does have good subject detect. The IAF, yeah, I wouldn't say it's any better than the OM5 Mark II would be. I mean, I don't have any scientific method to testing IAF. I just take a series of photos walking back and forth and then count how many pictures are sharp, how many are not. And I didn't really see any difference between, say, my XH2 and uh, my OM1, for example. But the EM1 Mark III, when I compared it against the Canon that I had, did an excellent job with eye detect. And the OM5 Mark II has the same autofocusing system as the M1 Mark III did. So it should be fine. What's the other thing? 40 megapixel res, definitely. You can see a difference, but it's very minimal. So let me see. Uh, I have not done well, let's see. What's this? Okay, here's a comparison. So I took a picture of the waterfalls here and I cut out this little square and then I posted that square up here. So here is the OM1 in high-res shot mode, 80 megapixels, and you can see the detail there. Here's the XH2. Oh, it's not alike. I have the Fuji, that's a typo, but I have the Fuji 33 millimeter RLM. That's their newest, prime lens using the high-res shot mode that Fuji has, 160 megapixels. And to my eye, the OM system is sharper. And then over here, I have the Sony A7R5 at 240 megapixels. Again, not much difference between these three images. So you can pixel peep this one. That's the high-res shot mode. So uh, let me put this in the chat section. Okay, that's the high-res comparison. And then let me go back to comparisons. A7R5. Okay, here's like a normal shot, right? So I'm going to share this one. Uh, so there's that page. So I just want to debunk, this high resolution thing. If we punch in, here's the OM1. You can see the details here. Here's my XH2 with the 40 megapixel sensor. And then here is the Sony A7R5 that it has a native uh, 8 megapixel or 60 megapixel. And of the three, I do like the Fuji the best, and I do see more fine detail in the Fuji lens. The Sony here is about the same. It's just a little more depth of field here because I'm at 2.8. I'm not sure why I did that. And then here's the OM1. But you really can only see the very fine detail and differences is when you really punch in 200, 300, 400%. And where I'm noticing differences right under her eye, There's very, very fine detail here, or very fine hairs under her eye that I can make out better here on the Fuji and make out a little better here on the Sony. This lens has a little better contrast to it. The Zeiss lens is pretty awesome. Okay. Uh, what's this? Sony Fuji. Okay, so here's another shot. This is a still life. So there's 20 megapixels cropped in. There's 40 megapixels cropped in. So, the lettering here is pretty much garbled on the OM1, whereas on the XH2, the larger letters here, numbers I should say, look pretty good. But like the very, very fine print over here is garbled. You can't make it out heads or tails of that. The smaller numbers here are a little rough too. Then you go to the Sony's native 60 megapixel, and all of the numbers are pretty much you can read. The numbers here almost certainly better than the Fuji and way better than the OM systems. So, but look what I'm cropping into. I'm cropping into this very, very small portion right here out of this entire frame. So you have to really, really pixel peep to see the difference. Okay. So anyway, check those out. Oh, let me give you the link to that too. That's probably the best one. Because that's a little more objective, right? Because we have letters and numbers that we can compare, as opposed to Ellie, who's kind of moving a little bit. Um, so ultimately, yeah, you will get more resolution because it's a high resolution sensor. But how big a deal is that really? But yeah, I don't know if the IAF is better. The IQ is better, but only if you pixel peep. And then the comment about other companies are going all out while OM System is just rebranding. Yeah, it's tough, man. We kind of live in a bubble, right? Here on YouTube and in this live stream. We're all very we're looking for everything, right? We're looking at everything. We're very knowledgeable about different different features on a camera and how good or bad they are. But to the average person, I don't think they look at it that closely. I mean, when I was buying cameras, my very first camera I did, but after that I did not. After that, but anyway, that's another story. Uh, I don't care about 6K videos. So this is why the camera I think is the only reason I like the XE5 is because I like how it looks. But the EVF, oh my God, the EVF is so tiny. It's so tiny compared to the OM5. It's like a little circle on the back, little tiny circle on the back, and you got to put your eye right up to it to see in there. It's like looking through a tunnel. It felt like to me, but it was a very small, compact, very good-looking camera. But I would just steer people towards if you want to get Fuji, I would steer you to the XT5. Forget about the XT50. No weather sealing, no IBIS, mediocre, kind of more of the same EVF and back screen, small battery. I would pick the OM5 Mark II over the XT50 any day because having that sensor alone with 40 megapixels is not going to cut it, because I like all of the other features. Okay. And Tim says you had a very good experience selling your EPL7 to MPP. Okay, appreciate that. It's always good to know. And then Marco says worse weather sealing minimal to new buyers. OM5 represents a good value to guys. Yeah. So when the comment about the guys like us that track everything, that's what I meant. We're kind of in a bubble. But I think for most people, the OM5 Mark II is an awesome camera. And for me, it's an awesome camera as well. But again, I'm buying it because of its color, and it's definitely going to be better than my EM. The OM5 Mark II and the original OM5 Mark One. No, I'm sorry. The OM5 Mark One doesn't have this either. But the new menu system is not a big deal. You can get used to anything. But having that consistency camera to camera and having the my menus on the side instead of like buried down at the bottom, I don't know how to explain it, but the workflow through the menu system is a little better. The way it's rearranged. I think it's more because it's color coded and there's icons. It's just I don't know. It's a little better, but it's not that much different. But the EM5 Mark III doesn't have a my menu, right? So I have to go into the settings every time I want to make a change, as opposed to if I could just go to my menu and make the quick change, I can do that. The OM5, the Mark One and the Mark II both also have uh, easy access to the custom modes. So I can assign custom mode 2 to buttons if I want, whereas this one has one C on the mode dial. And if I want to activate custom mode 2 or 3, I have to go into the menu and recall it. And that's a problem. Being able to quickly access the custom modes via the buttons because you can reassign it or turning the dial to the right thing, which is even better. That's a big deal in workflow with the OM5 Mark One and the Mark II. And so the new menu system, the workflow with the My Menus, the being able to assign the custom modes to your dial or your buttons, and then the USB-C port that allows me to do time lapse and long exposure photography without worrying about the battery. It also has the webcam feature that I'll never use, but there's just so many things about the OM5 Mark II that solve some of the issues I'm having with my EM5 Mark III. And the OM5 Mark II is going to have faster processing, when it comes to the focus stacking and high res. I mean, I'm going to test for that if I buy the camera just to double check, but it should because it has the TruePix 9. This has the TruePix 8 processor in it. Uh, what else? There's just a lot of little things. Now I get it. The EVF's the same. The live view's the same. The sensor is the same. The stabilization is better on the OM5 Mark One and Mark II than it is the M5 Mark III. But this is very long in the tooth now, right? This is what 6 years old. Uh, so it's going to have some. It just has a lot of workflow issues, but the image quality is the same. But the new OM5 Mark II should be better in every way, even if it's just minor. But I agree in that what Mark Wolf was saying is that OM System did not really put enough work into the OM5 Mark II. I think the OM5 Mark II should have been a baby OM1 with the new sensor, processor, and the autofocusing system and everything else that goes with it. I really feel like they should have done that. I don't know what the technical limitations were because I know trying to miniaturize something that's already very compact is hard and expensive, and they just don't have the resources to do it. But that said, the OM5, the M5 Mark III, all of the OM system and Olympus cameras, I think they were all kind of ahead of their time. And that's why even today I think it's a very competitive camera, the OM5 Mark II, with even with the minimal updates. Now it's a modern camera with USB-C and the new menus. I did pick up on Robin's video. He talked about the OM5. I watched a little bit yesterday and today. I think he was floored by the fact that the FLM3 is not being supported anymore, the little tiny flash. I'm a little floored by that too. Why would they take that away? Well, they're not shipping it with the FLM3 anymore anyway. But I'm curious if they're coming out with maybe another line of flashes, right? Which would be that would be interesting. But yeah, so far, OM Systems, they're carrying the and this is because Olympus, before they sold to OM Systems, they had all of this technology and parts, the stack sensor and et cetera, already in the pipeline. And if you look at any past cameras from OM Systems or Olympus, they've been doing this for years. They'll introduce like a new flagship model or some model that has the new stuff, and then for the next five years or so, all the other cameras will eventually get that. And then when the new flagship comes out, I would say it's a 4 or 5 window, at least 4 or 5 year window. That's what's going to have the new sensor or technology in it that will make you go wow, so to speak, right? And yeah, the new okay, yeah. So yeah, that's a head scratcher. The other head scratcher is the frames per second. I looked in the manual and I didn't see 10 frames per second mechanical shutter. So everybody saying that it doesn't have 10 frame per second mechanical shutter is right. I never used the 10 frame per second mechanical shutter anyway, so it's not a deal breaker for me. And the readout speed is fast enough. You don't have to worry about rolling shutter. I never did when I was using my EM1 Mark III or any of the other cameras that have that same sensor, even the OM5. Rolling shutter is negligible, but yeah, not having support for the FLM3 is a head scratcher, and not having 10 frames per second is a head scratcher. It's got to be the same shutter mechanism and same IBIS system. It's gotta be the same. They wouldn't design that from, from scratch, right? Unless they were gonna offer something new, and they've basically taken those 2 things away. Maybe a firmware update will fix that and it'll support not support, but I'm sorry, it'll support 10 frame per second through a firmware update, 'cause I can't imagine why they would take that away. Support for the FLM3 might be more of a hardware issue where they didn't wire in the power to the pinouts to give the flash any power. And that's a head scratcher. But again, there's so many good third-party options for tiny flashes now. It's not really any need to use an FLM3. Um, and Ian says, I have a friend with a 12-year-old daughter who loves watching birds. She wants to start photographing them. I'm suggesting the 75 to 300. Which body would you recommend to start with? Oh, I would say definitely the OM5 Mark II, definitely. Um, that's a great combo. If I get the OM5 Mark II, I'll definitely do a bird video with it. I did a bird video with the EM5 Mark III and the 75 to 300 somewhere on my channel. I wasn't having a good birding day, but I'll find it for you. Yeah, it's this video here. Let me copy this link and but yeah, it works fine for birding. I mean, birds in flight, you have to up your skill set with tracking, but for bird on a stick and the kind of things that she would do, I think the OM5 Mark II would be awesome. I would skip the uh, EM10 series at this point. It's just they're just getting too old. Without the phase detect and all of the customization that you can do with an OM5. Because kids, she'll learn that camera like inside out. She'll probably get better at it than I am, like in a week, right? But I think the OM5 Mark II would be great. Yeah, regarding frame per second, OM5 does 10 frame per second without AF or exposure. OM5 2 does 6. Okay. Yeah, the OM5 Mark 1 does do 10 frames per second, but the OM5, I'm sorry, the OM5 Mark 1 does 10 frames per second. The OM5 Mark 2 does not. And my EM5 III also does 10 frames per second mechanical. So I don't understand why they took that away. I mean, I don't use it ever, but it's kind of a head scratcher. Not being able to use the flash is another kind of, yeah, I don't get it. And Adam says, "Good morning, Rob. Recommended your channel last week for bro." Oh, thanks. I try. And they wanted to learn, and you are a good, approachable teacher. Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. I mean, I'm just one of many, right? There's so many good uh, bird photographers out there that use Micro Four Thirds. If you find that my teaching style connects with how your brain works and makes sense, that's great. But definitely explore all the other uh, channels out there. There's a lot of great photographers out there. Because my videos tend to be kind of long and tedious sometimes. At least that's the complaints I get on my videos. It's too long and boring for what I want. I said, okay. I said, go check out Robin Wong or Lee Hoy or somebody. Well, Lee Hoy makes long videos too, but there's others. And I'm not offended or discouraged in any way if somebody doesn't like my videos. It's okay. I get it. Like we were talking earlier about Tatiana and the photographic eye. It's just, I just don't like their content. Nothing wrong with them personally, but the content just kind of bores me. And by the way, love those bird photos oh, thanks. So yeah, let me share a couple of those real quick. Uh, let's see, where's my Instagram? So this is the OM3 and 75 to 300, 1/4000th of a second. I didn't even talk about some of the challenges that I had. I was having a heck of a time yesterday. That's bird on a stick. That's low hanging fruit, literally speaking. This is another kind of cool shot. All the XF data there, if you guys want to check it out. But there's the lens model and there's the camera model. Uh, this was a in-camera stack. This came out pretty good. This beetle was about the size of a sunflower seed. I mean, it was tiny. So I was really happy with that shot. And this is some other stuff I was doing. So yeah, those came out good. And I got tons more. If I open up my thing that I haven't even exported yet. Let me see. Maybe maybe I have some more here. Here's another one that came out pretty good. And there's the exit data. Pretty much the same thing. 1/4000th of a second, wide open. And the ISO is going to jump up and down because I used auto ISO. A little bit of exposure comp here and the focal length, and then again, lens model and that. This is another one. Whoops. Let me close this. This one is okay. It's just a reflection shot, but I thought it was kind of neat. It was sticking its tongue out, which is a little hard to see. Oops, sorry about. Anyway, it's sticking its tongue out. This is without noise reduction. I accidentally forgot to. I cropped it and then I didn't process it. This is another good shot. This is a little bit out of focus. So these are some of the limitations of the 75 to 300 for this kind of photography. These birds. This is the 75 to 300 also. So you can do close-up photography with it like this. This was an interesting shot. These two birds were fighting. I didn't know swallows fight, but I guess so. This another reflection shot. This one came out pretty good. And this I'm testing my different film simulations. I'm still tweaking that. I'll get there eventually. Okay, let's see. Oh, let me check something here. Okay, so let me cherry pick one of these shots real quick. Uh, like this one. If you look at where I cropped this down to like 2.5 megapixels, maybe just a little over 2 megapixels is the crop. And this is with the 75 to 300. And where's that image? It's this image here. So that's why, like, when I was zooming in, it's not great. It looks a little rough, but you have to appreciate the original image was cropped in like that tight. Oh, that's not the one. Where is it? This one. This one. So if I zoom in, you can see there's hardly any detail left here because there just aren't enough pixels on the bird. But when you frame it this way, it's an okay shot, right? Uh, where's my other bird picture? This one came out pretty good. But again, you can see this one I had a much bigger crop, but not much bigger, just a little bigger, but I got a better angle on it. And that was this one. So this is okay too. And if I punch in, there's a decent amount of detail there. But again, this is like less than 3 megapixels. It's closer to 2 megapixels than it is 3. But that's just how it is with these swallows. Now, when I was taking this is sort of my signature shot of the day. But again, you can see if I just crop in on the bird, there's not even 1 megapixel there on the bird itself, right? It's 778 by 778. But this is the crop I ended up going with. And this is if I reset this, you can see all the noise and the white balance is way off. It's terrible. But then the finished image was the final processed image is where did that go here? That's the final processed image. That came out pretty good. This is why I use DxO. I really like DxO. Um, this was a high res shot. I think this is with the 60 macro. I feel like I missed focus on this or something. because it's just a little bit soft. I'm gonna have to work this image again. I didn't post-process this too well. But okay. So, whoops. Uh, where's my screen? I think so. Those shots came out okay, right? As to be expected. But I was working with. I much prefer my 300 millimeter prime now that I think about it, because I mean, obviously it's a pro lens, it's going to be sharper and all that. But the 300 millimeter prime, this goes back to what we were talking about in the very beginning. It kind of forces me to stay at this one focal length. And when I do that, I tend to get better shots. With the 75 or zoom lenses in general, I was zooming in and out. And, a lot of times the bird was too far away and I didn't zoom in. So that's why a lot of the shots, are like at 100 millimeters instead of 300 millimeters. And it's hard to track the birds because they're flying at like 30 to 40 miles an hour. They're fast and they're only like this big, right? Uh, the swallows. So I was tracking them. I was doing a pretty good job tracking them once I got the feel for it. But yeah, I'd rather, you know, of course I could just not lock it, but just keep the lens at 300 millimeters on the 75 to 300 and see how that goes. But I ran into two challenges with the 75 to 300, and this applies really only to very small, fast birds like this. Is the autofocusing motors are just not fast enough to keep up with them. So, like when I was showing that image of the where did it go? This image here. The focus is it's back focus. The focus is back here, not on the front of the bird. So it's a little bit soft when you get up close. And it's pretty sharp right back here because that's where the bird took off from. It was on the ground. And the autofocusing motors just didn't keep up. And then I would find that later in the shot, the bird was in focus. For most other types of birding, they're usually flying across this way. They're not changing the focal length that quickly. 75 300 is perfect for, but when they're flying directly at you like this, yeah, the autofocusing motors just don't seem to be fast enough. And then also, compared to, I made a video about best settings for birds in flight. I might have to adjust that a little bit after trying to shoot these birds for a couple of days. Because what I was finding was the camera, my OM3, I gotta take out my OM1 and OM3 at the same time and compare because I don't remember experiencing this on my OM1, and I have the Mark One. Was I would push the shutter button down and nothing would happen. The camera would not take the picture. And I was in Pro Capture, but it just wouldn't take the picture. And I tried removing the battery, putting it back in, and then going back at it again. Same problem. So I changed a lot of the settings to try to mitigate that, what I thought might be the issue. Like I turned the autofocus release, turn that back on. Normally I have that turned off. And that's what I recommended in my bird and flight video, but I turned that back on. I think I fixed the white balance and I turned off image stabilization because I'm at 1/4000th of a second. You don't need it. Okay. And then I found the camera to be more responsive. But it was really frustrating to see the bird in the frame because it's hard to get them because So doing this to see the bird in the frame, then mash the shutter button, and the camera is dead. It's just not doing anything. Oh, so I got to go out again. I don't remember that ever happening, but I've only been going out with the 300 f4 Pro on my OM1. I'm gonna have to take out the OM1 with the 75 to 300 and swap between that and the OM3 and see if they both behave the same way in the same conditions. Because that was really frustrating yesterday with the OM3 and the 75 to 300. The autofocusing motor is not being fast enough. I get it. It's a budget lens, and only in the kind of shots where the subject is coming right at you, meaning they're changing the focal plane very quickly, that I ran into any kind of autofocusing issues. But for the most part, the autofocus and the camera work well together. But I can't figure out this. Excuse me. I can't figure out this other issue. I'm gonna work on that maybe today. I might go out and do that. And hi, I wanted to stop by and say thanks for your guides on the OM1. Still unable to figure out setting custom video modes with different shutter speed settings. You can't do it on the OM1. Uh, the only camera that you can really do that is on the OM3 right now. That's in the OM system lineup. So I assume you saw the video about saving video in custom modes on the OM1 that I have, and I go through all the limitations to doing that. So if you haven't seen that video, I do have that video. I'll just post it here for others. So it's how to save video settings to a custom mode. That's the title of the video. It's episode 370. So there's that video, just in case you didn't see that one. That's the video. And I talk about the limitations there. And good job with the swallows. I know from experience how difficult they are to follow. Yeah, they're tough. They're tough. But after about 30 minutes of being there, because I'm a little rusty, uh, it's like riding a bike. You kind of get back into it. And I was using the same method. I would just look over the top of the camera, look at the barrel of the lens, and then I could see the bird. And a lot of times, believe it or not, I could push the shutter button and I got the bird in the frame. But I was at the wider end, like 100 millimeters, right? Uh, but when you zoom in to 300 millimeters, doing this is good for getting them in the frame, and then you look in, and then you just adjust accordingly. I never had any issue with the OM1 and 75 to 300. Yeah, I can't imagine there was. I'm gonna have to, like I said, I'm gonna have to try it. So I'm gonna have to try it side by side, my OM1 and my OM3 with the 75 to 300, and see if there's a problem with the OM3 or if there's a problem with my settings. Because most of the time, I'm not shooting swallows. I'm usually shooting osprey or herons. These are big birds. Even eagles, and the eagles and osprey are easy compared to swallows, and not very challenging to the autofocusing system. So the issue may not have come up before. This is the first time I've really tried to shoot swallows uh, since last year. Right? It's been a long while. And last year I used my 300 millimeter. I didn't use my 75 to 300. So I don't think I've ever tried it. So I have to try it again. I may go out today. Sometimes it messes with your custom settings. I had to reset my custom settings a couple of times. Okay. Not sure what you're in reference to there. Rob, are you able to shoot while zooming with the OM1 in 75 to 300 in SH2? Yes. Uh, because it's trying to refocus with every frame, so it doesn't matter what focal length the lens is at. Let me see if there's any, if I can actually show you an example of that. Because I did that a lot, zooming in and out. But as I was saying, when the bird is flying across, the focal plane is not changing much here, and it's easy to get. I have a lot of these shots in focus. Um, let me. I've already started pruning, so I'm not sure. It's gonna be this one. I'm at 117. Yeah, I didn't zoom there. This one's at. Nope, didn't zoom there. 117 again. 132. 132. 132. I'm not going to be able to find an example. I'm at 100. 100. Okay, so here I did zoom. All right, so let's look at this sequence here. This is, I think that's the reflection of the bird. So this is the first frame. This is a reflection of the bird. Then in the next frame, and you can see my focal length is at 100 millimeters here. Now the bird is in the frame, but it's out of focus. Now the next frame, the bird is in focus. So it really, in this case, it only took one frame to get the bird in focus, right? That's in focus. It's a little underexposed, but that's in focus. I'm still at 100 millimeters. Then at some point, I decide to zoom in. Did I miss the money shot? I did. He buried his thing in here, but we're still in focus. Uh, I'm at 100 millimeters, 100 millimeters. Okay, here's where I start to zoom in. Let me see. 100. Okay, so here I'm at 109, still in focus. Then at 124, pretty much in focus. 124, pretty good. Then I zoomed again. Now I'm at 132 millimeters. I lost focus. 132, 132. Still out of focus. I don't think I ever got it back in focus because it's just too far away now. Oh, now it's back in focus. So that time it took, let me see. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it took roughly 6 frames when it lost focus to get focus back. And this is not a scenario where the bird is changing the focal plane too fast, I don't think. Um, but yeah, the short answer is yes. You can zoom while being in continuous shutter. I did notice it seemed to lose focus during the zoom period, which is to be expected. But in this case, it took 6 frames to reacquire focus. Uh, once I achieved the focal length, once I got to 132 millimeters, it took 6 frames and then it got focus back. But man, I mean, when you look at this, the bird is tiny in the frame here and is against a very busy background. So this was a very challenging scene. And then I tracked it, it turned around. I still have it. I lost focus here. Now the camera's gonna have a hard time finding it. It's almost there, lost it again, and now it's in focus again. And I'm still at 132 millimeters. So let's see. The bird is out of frame in that shot. So this is the last frame. Misfocused just slightly there. That one's in focus. It misfocused here. So the bird changed from this point and flew around over to here. And it took a couple of frames to get it back into focus, and then it lost focus here as it leaves the frame. This is the very edge of the frame, and then he's out of frame. Oh no, he's down here. I'm still panning. I think this is a different bird. That's a different sequence. Yeah, out of focus. Almost got it. Now it's in focus. So from here, two, so one, two, three. The fourth frame is in focus. Then the fifth frame, still in focus, still in focus, still in focus. So it's doing a good job here. And then I tracked it until it went out of frame. We lost focus somewhere here. That's in focus. But once it got right to the edge of the frame, it lost focus. Okay. Uh, I was photographing swallows and waxwings in flight yesterday too. Just got the 100 to 400 Mark II. Super challenging subjects, fast and tiny. You got much better results than I did. Oh, okay. I tried. I mean, of course, I'm going to cherry pick out of 4,000 images. One is bound to be in focus. I mean, it's like a broken clock is right twice a day, right? Is what they say. And swallows change directions very quickly in midair and makes it very difficult to focus and shoot. Yes, they are tough. They are tough. And Henry says the M5 Mark II shutter closes when I point the camera down. Is it worth the repair? No. Just shoot in silent shutter unless it closes regardless of what shutter mode you're in. Because you can buy one in like excellent condition for about $400 US. Let's say you can fix your camera for half that. I doubt it. It's probably going to cost $400 at least to fix it. Even if they fix it, you still have an old camera that has probably been used a lot. Whereas you can buy one in really good condition, maybe even a low shutter count for about $400. Better yet, just upgrade to the OM5 unless you really like the EM5 Mark II, which I totally get. It's a nice camera. And leaving the chat, okay, Sis Natura, thanks for coming in. And fantastic swallow snaps, crisply captured. I tried. They were tough though. They're tough birds. I'll get better at it. Like I said, I haven't shot swallows since last year, so a little bit rusty. But once I get a feel for the camera and the lens and zooming and all that, I should get pretty good at it, and then I'll be able to tell if it's the camera or it's me. Right now, I'm kind of in that phase where, did I do something wrong, or is the camera doing something wrong, like failing? So am I failing, or is the camera failing? And is the camera failing, or is it the lens failing? The lens will fail for very, very fast changes in the focal plane. I'm talking about the 75 to 300. The 300 f4s, man, that's lightning quick. That thing, that thing will handle swallows, no problem. But the 75 to 300, you have to kind of catch them, you know, when they're not coming directly at you or flying away. You don't want a butt shot anyway. But okay. Oh man, it's been a couple hours, 2.5 hours. So maybe we'll wrap it up here. Uh, I will be back. I'll be back Tuesday for a shopping stream, and I'm going to turn off the ads next week. So Tuesday, Friday, Sunday, ad-free live streams, if you can stand it. Maybe you need a break, a commercial break from me. uh, but in any case, I'm going to try it, and hopefully the lack of ad revenue, like all of $5, will if that. Sometimes I make like $2 on a live stream. It's pretty sad. It's like, why bother? Uh, but I have fun. I like talking to you guys and sharing best I can and helping the best I can. But definitely join me on Tuesday for the shopping stream. I want to talk about. I'm probably going to talk about the tripod head and some landscape photography gear related to that. Because I think I found something that's perfect. It's perfect for landscape. Uh, so I'm excited about that. So thanks again for joining me today. Everyone, be healthy, eat well, exercise, uh, you know, and we'll be back on Tuesday and see you again soon. Thanks so much for joining me today.